Alright, so this is going to be the follow-up video to the Ableton Live audio effects, the built-in effects. So let's get straight to the EQ8. So let's go over the basics here first. You can click on the screen here and it'll make it bigger. You can adjust that, which is pretty nice. Oddly enough, I prefer it like this. I think it's easier. So that's how I'm going to go through it. So you got your options here. These are going to be your high pass filters, low pass filters. These are shelves. This would be a low shelf, this would be a high shelf, and then these are bells, as typically it's, I don't really know. That's an interesting, it's just a really sharp bell curve that they kind of made. It's kind of a default Ableton thing. This would be your more typical, and then you can draw it around. So yeah, let's get back over here to, let's start with the low passes, and now this is your cue point, and you can adjust these things in a couple different ways. You've got your frequency up here as to where your actual node is going to be registering, and then your cue point has to do with how hard or soft of a curve that's going to be. I encourage you to listen to this quite a bit. I'll give you a little tip that I found. I'm going to post this later in some tips videos, is to make a softer high pass or low pass. Is to get the shelf, take the cue to 0, take your dB all the way down, and now this will actually give you a much softer high pass or low pass. You can do it on both sides. Okay, so there's those, and these are kind of cool because you can click on and off, so you can easily A/B and hear what you're doing. And then, so this one's about the same scenario. You've got your gain knob, just to how many dBs you want to take down. Your cue is going to be how tight or big of a cut or boost you want to make for that matter. And then your frequency knob. Okay, so there's some cool things here. We've got left and right, and we've got mid and side EQing. So left and right's fairly obvious. You're EQing the left and right side of the audio, and then you've got mid and side EQing. And what this is you're able to edit the middle and the sides of the audio. This is super helpful for getting clean mixes, especially on anything, depending on what you're working on. So yeah, that's the overall basics. There's some other stuff down here. This is kind of a cool automate stuff to this, and you can obviously it's the scale relative to how much you're adjusting the nodes, and yeah, and then the gain of the actual EQ. I'm guessing this is an actual, let's see, oh look at that, I never even knew there's an actual gain boost on the EQ. Okay, last little tip trick here. This is actually a really big one. And if you right click here, see this oversampling? It's already checked on mine, but it may not be on yours. If it's not, click it. And what this does is it enables it to be a much higher quality EQ. Once you turn it on, what I would encourage you to do is to do this. I would open up a blank EQ, turn it on, and then go to Save as Default Preset. That way, every single time you open up your EQ, it's always going to open with that on there. And let's see here, I'll show you how to save some of your own presets within the actual audio effects folder, which is pretty handy. It's super easy. So if you want to create you know, a particular shape that you normally use, you can title it. Command R will open that up, where you've got the right click option for rename. And then what you can do is just hit that little it's a floppy disk is what it is. They don't exist anymore, but still the icon. you hit that, and it gives you the option to go ahead and save it in there, which I've already got one. And we'll just cancel that. How do I don't want to save you. I changed my mind. Oops. Okay. Alright, that should be the basics of the EQ. I can give you a basic little... So you can get some audio in here and actually hear what this is doing. So yeah, I can see there's all kinds of ways to manipulate. And then you can even come in and map these different nodes, so you could map, and you can go in here and show the automation for this. Have some crazy lines going on, right? Cool. So that's EQ in a nutshell. I think compression was the next one. Yeah, why not? Let's tackle it. I'm gonna use this glue compressor because it's really actually a really nice compressor. I've been trying out a bunch of different compressors, and ultimately, because of CPU and the quality, I'm using this one a whole lot now. Okay, so we'll make this a more basic compression tutorial. Compression can be used for color, tone, and movement. I'm going to go ahead and say right now that I have not been engineering long enough to know all the ins and outs to it. It seems like producers that are 20, 30, 40 years deep still say they learn, and don't claim to know everything about how this stuff works. But basically, what you're doing is you are decreasing the decibel range and the way that you're able to kind of manipulate that is how the compressor is actually going to be initially hitting the sound. So this is like your attack, and this would be the overall impact and kind of how hard it's going to be turning, how quickly is what it is, how quickly it's turning on. And so yeah, it'll at the smaller numbers here, 0.1 and 1, it's going to be a very quick attack. It's going to cut on and immediately start squashing the signal, and then all the way over here it's going to have a slower kind of decay where it slowly starts to take the threshold down, or take the overall signal level down. The release is kind of just the opposite of that. It's going to be how quickly the compressor stops working. And so all the way over here we're going to immediately cut off, and then as we get further over here it's going to take longer, which has like a pumping. It's going to create more of a pumping kind of sound, so you can like kind of really listen for these different settings to figure out what is actually happening and be able to make the best decision. Now your ratio has to do with how many decibels are being actually taken off the initial signal. So it's like 2 decibels, 4, and then 10, and so you're getting just basically into a softer compression, into a more intense, harder type of compression. And all of this has to do with how much threshold so let's get some sound in here. So I'm gonna, for this type of sound, do a little idea of what I might want. So you're going to hear already it's decreasing the signal, so we'll bring up the makeup gain. And you can hear and so, like I said, this will just be a basic video, and with only one sound in here, you're not going to be able to hear that much of what's going on with a compressor. You're generally going to want to use multiple other sounds within different ranges, like your percussion group with your synths or vocals or bass, in comparison to be able to hear what the compressor is actually doing and the way it's moving it in time and space. So that's just something I would say go ahead and start tackling. yeah, if you're watching my tutorials, I'm assuming you're a beginner, so that's awesome. And compression has taken me a few years that I've been playing with them. I mean, I've really been playing with them for 4 or 5 years. It's only been the past year where I've really just started to even know what I'm doing with them. Okay, so side chaining. This is where you're able to actually take a different signal other than the track you're on. So we're on this drum loop, and right now the compressor is compressing the sound that the track is running the signal through, obviously. If we engage the sidechain, we can actually tell it to take the signal of compression from a different audio signal, and this is where we would set up like sidechain compression or something. So I can make a separate video on that. There's tons of videos on sidechain compression. One thing I want to point out here, though, that I think isn't used as much is the EQ option. And so what this actually allows you to do is compress particular frequency ranges with the different shelving or bandpass options. And the really cool thing with this is that you can, like with your drum kit, you could, you get your kick and your bass really where you want, or your kick and your 808 most likely, and where you want them, and then your highs you can actually then control separately to compress, and essentially what this is, you're able to turn it into a multi-band compressor. You've just got one band here, and you could easily group this up and turn it into 2 or 3 bands, and then have them all set, separately. Yeah, you wouldn't want to do it the way I just set it up, but just to show you real quick. And yeah, so just to make sure you understand how this works, so what you would do is you would, let's say we're just going to compress like around above 200, tends to be kind of what I do. This Q has to do with how sharp of a curve, remember on the EQ, the Q, same thing over here, and setting the frequency as well. So we're going to be only compressing above 195 hertz, and what that sounds like, let's turn this off. Sounds kind of cool, actually. It brings out the low end in it because it's, it's compressing the highs, right? Watch. I should do that more often. Sounds good. All right. So, reverb. Let's move on. Reverb is, well, we could get all complicated. It's essentially delay. It's a lot of delays. Or extremely long delays, and this is the Ableton reverb. So what you've got over here is the option to filter what is coming in to the reverb and going to actually be processed. A lot of times you're going to want to take out your lows. I don't know why it's not defaulted. I mean, it's good to curve off your highs a lot of times too to avoid some harshness, but you never want really any low frequencies in your reverb. Good little tip there. Spin adds some little reflection, tries to create the natural setting of it. Most of the time I turn it off. Chorus does the same, a similar kind of effect. I don't really like the Ableton versions of it, to be honest. This is pretty explanatory. It's quality, eco, mid, and high. I don't really use this reverb that much, but if I were to use it much, I would probably set it on high and do that same thing where I set the default, save as default preset here. Probably do that with a few things. Okay, size has to do with the size of the room that it's emulating, so you can play with that. It's sound like a small little bathroom or sound like a giant cavern. Reflection has to do with the amount of reflection points that are occurring. Just kind of that diffuse. Pre-delay has to do with how much, it's basically kind of like the attack of the reverb. So it's going to, at this point here where it's like 0 millisecond, 0.50 milliseconds of pre-delay, the reverb is going to turn on as quick as possible when the sound source comes through it. And as you increase the pre-delay, you're going to have a decay time before, or you'll have a bit of a bleed in. can't think of this properly here. The reverb will not start until this particular time that you've set. So you'll get the clean signal coming through at first, and then the reverb will follow with this delay time. And that's really nice on vocals, especially so you can have kind of that, you want the clarity of the voice, but you still want to hear that reverb. Okay, stereo is going to set the stereo effect of it. This is pretty cool for effects. Shaper shapes it, fun. And then there's decay time, which this is going to set, similar to the size, it's going to set how long the reverb is actually occurring. So, yeah, just play with that, and you've got smaller room size basically, and larger room size is a good way to think about it. Density is kind of like the density of the reverb, just kind of dial to effect, scale, and then dry and wet, and should be obvious. Dry is going to have no reverb sounds, and then wet is going to be entirely, so this is a blend. What it's doing is creating a blend of the dry signal, your actual original audio source, and then the wet source. So what it would sound like it'd be. Right? And then you've got this freeze thing here. It's pretty cool to use for effects. What it does, here's a better example of it. It just freezes the audio, the reverb time. It just creates this big white noise gap. It's fun. I've got probably way too much decay time and such to be able to hear. Yeah. Now you can hear it. Yeah, I think that about covers it. The flatten cut, it's affecting this freeze here. I'm not entirely sure. So I think flatten cut, it's probably trying to clean up your signal. Ooh, that sounds dope though. Definitely for some sound design stuff, right? Okay, alright, that's gonna be the end of the audio effects 102. Like and subscribe to me, please. Check out, I'm gonna be putting out a bunch more stuff. Just got my studio set up here legit in Ashland. Yep, check me out. I'm all over the web, got the website and everything, Christos.com. Peace.